Hi, I'm Dana Brownlee. I'm a Forbes Career Senior Contributor, keynote speaker, and corporate trainer. And today I want to go beyond the article to talk about my May 2nd article, which was entitled, "Is it best to spin the weakness question during an interview or perhaps try strategic vulnerability instead?" And I'm going to explain that. So I wrote this article because I think we've all been there. You know, you're interviewing, you want this job, and they ask one of those zinger questions. I remember back when, after business school, I interviewed for a consulting position and they asked me if I were to pick any animal, what animal would best represent my work style. Okay, we hate those questions. Recruiters, please stop asking those questions. But this question is just a classic and it probably will be around for quite some time. So I wanted to delve into that particular question. And we're in this space where, workplaces are telling us that things are changing, the definition of professional is changing, that we can show up as our authentic selves, that it's important to be vulnerable. And I do agree with that. I think it's aspirational, certainly. We want to be able to show up as our authentic selves. And I do think that there's a lot to be said for being vulnerable. Vulnerable creates an opportunity for you really to connect with that person that you're interviewing with. And that connection can make you memorable. And it might be the beginning of a real relationship, but you really do want to have some level of connection. You want to, come off the page or be more than a list of accomplishments. You really want them to get a sense of the real you. So in that regard, I do agree that vulnerability can be important and it can be helpful. But there's a limit. I don't think it's going to help you to, answer the question with, well, I really don't like I don't like dealing with clients, or I have a hard time getting along with people, or I can never show up to work on time. I can never turn anything in on time. I mean, obviously, these are not helpful responses to that question. These are eliminators for virtually any role. So certainly, we may not want to be that vulnerable, but I think there's a continuum there. And so that's why I talk about strategic vulnerability. I do think it's important and can be helpful to open up. So what are some of the questions you might want to ask yourself to make a determination in terms of, well, how open do I want to be? You might want to consider, hey, what sort of rapport do you feel you have with the interviewer? I mean, what is your gut telling you about, how comfortable or how open you might be able to be? Other thing you might want to consider is, how relevant is this weakness to this particular role? There's a difference for me. For example, one thing that I might say if someone were interviewing me is, I'm 51. I, am not all over social media. I'm a little technically challenged in certain ways. There's, the AV stuff is not my strong suit. I'm being honest. That's an area of weakness. But if I'm interviewing for a higher level, a director of, strategy, for example, or if I'm, interviewing to be a trainer or a facilitator, it's probably not as relevant versus maybe I'm interviewing for a social media position or the director of communications. Well, now that is very relevant. So think about the relevance factor. Something else that you might want to consider is, have you researched the team culture and what do you know about that team culture? How formal is it or informal? You might also want to consider how strong is your candidacy? Do you feel like your candidacy is strong enough that you have a little wiggle room there? You have an ability to maybe be pretty candid and honest about some areas of weakness. So that's something that you may want to consider as well. And then the last point that I made in the article that I want to highlight as well here is, you always want to be honest. I mean, it's not helping anyone for you to represent yourself as someone who's a strong fit for a position where you're not a strong fit for that position. So if during this exchange you're realizing that this may just not be the right role for you, that's a good thing, okay? Because ultimately it's, certainly not helpful to anyone if you're, offered a job or you take a job and it fundamentally is just a bad fit for your skill set. So thanks for joining me. If you enjoyed these tips, please remember to like and subscribe. Of course, as always, I represent my own personal views, not those of any particular business or organization. And if you want to stay in touch, follow me on LinkedIn and Forbes, and consider checking out my course catalog, which is available, my courses that are available on LinkedIn Learning. Thanks so much.